We are 2 weeks into Broncos training camp, and so that means we have some winners and losers to go over. Who has been the biggest winner so far? Who has been some of the losers? We're going to break that all down on today's show. Now, before we check out our first winner, very quick self-plug here. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe. Free daily content, live interactive shows every Tuesday, 3 o'clock Mountain Time. And I like to think the best Broncos YouTube channel out there. So consider subscribing if you have not already. Now, my first winner from training camp is Javonte Williams. I can't get enough of this story. I mean, I think back to the offseason and from February to May, talking about Javonte Williams and telling everyone to lower your expectations for 2023. It's going to be a rough recovery. I don't think he'll play in the start of the season. And I could not have been more wrong. And I'm not alone, but shout out to Javonte Williams because I like to think just a little bit. He watched some Broncos Breakdown videos, and he's like, you know what? Let's prove those guys wrong. Let's not even go on the PUP list one day for training camp. He's had reportedly a very strong start to camp. Had some nice plays with Russell Wilson the other day. Came back to the football, made a nice grab, worked his way down the sideline. Javonte has been great. It's been awesome to hear and see more and more good news come out from 33 because this is, I know, a bit of an exaggeration, but not really at the same time, a medical miracle. Like, you don't tear that many knee ligaments in October and be ready to roll by July the next year. Now, his own running back teammate, Tony Jones Jr., he sees this in Javonte. Here's what he said on Williams. He's rolling, man. I've never seen anyone roll like that fresh off a knee injury. That's dope, man. I love it for him. He's going to be ready, and I can't wait to see it. And, of course, his right guard, Quinn Meinerz, said, it's incredible. I'm really happy for him to see him to be back out here making great cuts. You know that when it gets time to play games, he's going to be knocking defenders back, and we're going to be pushing that pile. I'll never stop being amazed at the fact that Javonte Williams bounced back this quickly from a major knee injury, but we still get to play a regular season game. So I stand here today to say to myself and to you guys watching, let's not put the cart in front of the horse, right? Let's make sure that we get the regular season off and running before we truly crown Javonte Williams as an incredible comeback king, because it's been incredible so far, but the job's not done. The job in some ways has not even started. Definitely does not take away from the fact that he is available for the start of camp and not limited, but I don't want to just act like it's all over and we are ready to roll and Williams is 100%. We still have some time to go until the regular season. And if Javonte Williams bounces back like the way he started last year, minus that one goal line play in Seattle, there's reason to believe he's going to have a very good season. He averaged over 4 yards a carry before he went down. Never quite found the end zone in 2022, but I think he's going to do a lot of good things in this offense. But I'm also going to stand here and say it might not be as big of like a fantasy impact, if you know what I mean. Because Sean Payton, he doesn't love to run his running backs into the ground. Look at the RB1 under Sean Payton his last 5 years in New Orleans. He had Alvin Kamara lead this team in carries for those last 5 years. The highest Alvin Kamara ever finished in terms of NFL rank for rushing attempts was 6. And before that, tied for 15th in 2020, 25th in 2019, 16th in 2018. And Mark Ingram in 2017, he finished 13th. So Sean Payton likes to have a balanced backfield. So now we insert Samaje Perine. It's great to see Javonte Williams back out there, but I do want to remind you guys, it's not going to be 25 to 30 carries for Javonte Williams. Whether or not he was healthy, that was never going to be the plan in my opinion. You're going to see a good dosage of Samaje Perine because this is just a Sean Payton backfield. He likes a more of a committee approach. He does not want to have a running back get 330 plus carries. That's just not in his recipe book. He wants to balance it out a little bit and try and stretch running backs out for an extra season or two. And so you're going to see a good balance between Perine, Williams, and then whoever emerges as that RB3, whether it's Tony Jones, Jaleel McLaughlin, someone else. But just lower your sights, lower your hopes a little bit for Javonte Williams 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns. I don't know if he's going to get enough of a workload to get those types of numbers. My first loser from training camp, I'm going to go with the offensive line. It's only been a week and a half, so I'm not going to panic or anything like that, but I got to call it how I see it. And that is the offensive line has unfortunately struggled. Mike McGlinchey had to miss the first week of camp or so due to a personal issue. Very, unfortunate to see. But the offensive line, which has had a lot of investments made into it this offseason, has not been spectacular. If you had to pick a winner between the offensive line and the defensive line through the first week and a half at camp, well, you could ask anyone that's been to one day of practice, and they would tell you it's been the defensive line. They have gotten their fair share of wins in so far over the offensive line. I'm not going to panic. Give it some time. Things will start clicking. It takes time for an install to really get down to the trenches, to understand what they're being asked to do. Offensive line in the NFL is more than just, 3-point stance, block that guy. There are a lot of moving pieces. You have guards pulling. You have tackles getting to the second level and whatnot. You've got chips being made. There are a lot of nuances to it. Sean Payton is installing his new offense. There are going to be some growing pains. And as long as I see those growing pains in the preseason and the training camp, that's fine with me. That's what this is for. It's when it goes into the regular season, we have a bit of an issue. But so far, the offensive line has not been tremendously good. You guys can make fun of me for this, but I went right down the middle for Russell Wilson. I'm going to call it a draw. I don't think he's a winner, and I don't think he's a loser. So you can look at that half glass full or half glass empty. I don't think he's done enough for either side to be clearly labeled as one of those two. So I'm going to have it as a tie, a draw for Russell Wilson, because he got off to a bit of a sluggish start at training camp. There's no doubt about it. And we saw that last year, but no one really wanted to talk about it because everyone was excited about what this team could look like under Russ. But Wilson has strung together some really good practices. We're filming this live during our show on Tuesday, and Wilson during practice today had a great red zone drill, had some nice touchdowns involved. He looked much sharper than he did through the first few days of camp. He has put together some good back-to-back-to-back days, and that's what you want to see, because anyone can have one good day. But it's when you start stacking those good days, you get into a rhythm, you start feeling yourself, and then the regular season rolls around, and you carry that into the regular season. But Russell Wilson will play in the preseason, so we will get a better idea as to how much he has come along compared to how he looked last year. Now, his new teammate, Zach Allen, has had some really good things to say about him. He said, yeah, he's still fast. There's definitely a couple of times where after practice we'll be, I think I got you. He'll say, no, you didn't. And then we have to watch the film, and sometimes I did get him, sometimes I didn't get him. So no, he's still a great athlete and just very fortunate to have him. He's looked great. I know this is great things to hear, and it's very, rejuvenating, but this is just rah-rah teammate talk to me. Like, of course he's going to go out there and say, we're fortunate to have him. He's been great. All 32 teams do this. Not all 32 teams have great seasons. Go look at the winless Browns or winless Lions preseason. They all had positive things to say. Doesn't always work out that way. So yes, it's very nice to hear, encouraging and confident words being said about Russell Wilson, but I'm not going to look at that quote and go, Russ is back. Zach Allen said it. Book it. It's a fact. No, Zach Allen is just pumping up his new team. Now, I also want to add this, that Russ at the first week of training camp was meh. Had some good plays, had some bad plays. Russ was also dealing with the first week of training camp, which is the install. Sean Payton, brand new offense, new offensive coordinator. Lombardi comes in. They are implementing all their nuances. They are putting in their playbook. They are putting in their jargon, their lingo, all their audibles. It is a very complex thing. The install is not just going to Home Depot and getting some new flooring. The install is a big project, and it takes some time to get the swing of things. So if Russ is bad in the first week because he is still picking up the install, I'm not going to panic over that. All eyes are on Russell Wilson. Every single pass he throws at training camp is going to be scrutinized. Every single pass in the preseason is going to be judged. But I'm going to tune in more for the preseason and the joint practices, specifically the joint practices. Their third preseason game against the Rams, they have joint practices in LA, and I want to see how Russ fares in that more than the preseason, honestly, because in the preseason, he's going to go up against teams' backup defenses. In joint practices, it's starters versus starters. You can learn a lot more about a team in joint practices than preseasons, in my opinion. Now, random question. Not quite random, but hear me out. 18 touchdowns for Russell Wilson. Over or under? I picked 18 because it is the most amount of touchdowns a Broncos quarterback has thrown for since Peyton Manning retired. Teddy Bridgewater did it 2 seasons ago. So can Russell Wilson put up the best quarterback season since Peyton Manning did so back in, well, not quite Manning in 2015, but you get the gist. Over or under 18 touchdowns for Russ this upcoming season. Now, before we check out the rest of our winners and losers, be a winner by getting started with our sportsbook partner, BetUS. Chatsports.com/bet. When you enter that link in, enter the promo code Broncos125. You get hooked up with a 125% deposit bonus. Now, in English, if you put $100 in, they match that $100 and then give you an additional $25. So you got $225 to play with. Ride with me. I'm all over the overs for the preseason. Preseason is tough to watch. I am the mayor, the Grinch of football is not back until the regular season. So if you don't want to stab your eyes out for the fourth quarter of a preseason football game, bet the over. It makes it so much more enjoyable. Trust me. My second winner now, Zach Allen. This is a name that you might not be familiar with. Big free agent signing this offseason. The new guy in town. Get familiar with his name because he has been making a lot of noise in training camp. Reportedly, he has been the star of the defense. He has been a menace at training camp. He has caused the offense to stop and restart and refocus. He has consistently been disrupting plays, wreaking havoc on the offensive line. Denver loved him coming out of Arizona. They inked him to a 3-year, $45+ million contract to reunite him with Vance Joseph. So there is a lot of hype and potential and belief in Zach Allen based on what they're paying him. And he has lived up to that so far through the first 2 weeks of training camp. His new head coach, Sean Payton, had this to say on Allen. We had a player. I'm not comparing this player. They play different positions. We had a player in New Orleans, Trey Hendrickson, that was just a handful with each snap. Energy and effort. And Zach's that way. Down, in, and down, out. And really, really consistent. It takes a lot of energy, especially when you're playing inside, to play that way. And so he's got really good stamina. I've been really pleased with him. Zach Allen was a signing that I was not doing cartwheels over. I thought $45+ million for a guy who had 5.5 sacks as a career high a year ago was maybe a bit too rich, in my opinion. And we'll have to wait and see. But part of free agency is overpaying. That's just the way it rolls for all 32 teams. But I can see why Denver fell in love with this Zach Allen, right? The guy who was healthy from weeks 4 through 13 a year ago, and he put up 5.5 sacks in that 10-week span and 19 pressures. And so their belief is, hey, we're paying him 3 years, $45 million. If we can get those numbers for 17 games or just 16 or 15 or 14 games, we're going to have a 10-sack player. And for $45 million over 3 years, that's a pretty good deal on our end. I think Allen might be the X factor for this defense, where, yes, you have a star in Pat Surtain and Justin Simmons. But don't sleep on Allen, because if Allen gets you 8 to 10 sacks, which this team has not had a double-digit sack guy in, unfortunately, a little bit too long for how dominant their edge rushers were between Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. Get 10 sacks, let's say, from Zach Allen. Baron Browning, when he comes back, if he can chime in for 5 sacks, if Randy Gregory can get you 8 sacks, and if Frank Clark can get you 8 sacks, you've got 10, 8, 8, 5 from Baron Browning, a couple from Nick Bonito, Josie Jewell, and all of a sudden this defense could be a top 10 defense again, because Denver's going to throw a lot of edge rushers at opposing offensive lines, and they're going to have to prepare for all these different players, because They might not all be howitzers, but if you get enough guns on the line, it's going to be tough to put up any defense for that. So if Zach Allen can live up to the payday between that, Randy Gregory, if he's good to go, and Frank Clark, this will be a good rushing committee for the defensive line. My final loser is me. I'm the loser. I thought about this one for a while because I couldn't really find a big loser, and I guess that makes me tonight's big loser. Sal, move over. But I am the big loser because I am not going to bat 1,000 when it comes to my hot takes. And one take that's not airing out, at least so well so far throughout training camp, is that Nick Bonitto is not going to be a great player for the Broncos. I was skeptical of the selection at the time. Unfortunately, his redshirt freshman year last year did not bring a whole lot of optimism that he's going to have a great sophomore campaign. But Bonitto so far at training camp has been really good. He put on some weight this offseason. He looks like a player who, in his last 2 years with the Oklahoma Sooners, put up 16 sacks and 26.5 tackles for loss, right? That's the guy Denver's hoping to find again. And they didn't get it last year, and that's okay because they didn't need an impact player in round 2 last year. They were drafting for traits. So I wasn't too panicky over a unimpactful first season, but I wanted a little bit more than a guy who never stepped on the field for the first couple of weeks of the season last year. Like, I thought second round, you'd at least find a way to crack the defensive line rotation. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But so far, if you're looking for good news out of Denver Broncos training camp, Bonitto is looking like that second-round selection. Another guy who might not be a true star, but for the bar, it's, exceeding what I expected out of Randy Gregory, because outside of a tweaked ankle after an interception, so a very good play made by the former Dallas Cowboy, Randy Gregory has had some good moments so far at training camp. And I'm here to remind you guys that as harsh as I am on Randy Gregory and as critical as I am on him, the guy produced in the first couple of weeks last year, right? Weeks 1 through 4 before he got hurt, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 8 pressures. Him and Bradley Chubb were a 1-2 punching crew. I mean, they were very difficult to slow down and stop. Unfortunately, Gregory got hurt, and then he never quite came back the same in 2022. But if Denver can capture that guy for the first 4 weeks of the season and stretch it out over maybe not 17, because that seems like a lot to ask for from Gregory, but 14 or 15 games, they could have a 10-sack player. So who do you think has been the biggest winner so far from training camp? Was it someone that I talked about? Was it someone that I left off my list? Let me know in the comment section below who you think the biggest winner has been so far out of camp. Now, before we get on out of here, today's summer hot take, 84 degrees, another warm plate take. Mother Nature is keeping weather consistent in Denver. So 84 degrees. Here's my warm plate take for today. I think the Broncos finished top 5 in rush attempts for the first time since 2011 when Willis McGahee was this team's leading rusher. I think Sean Payton took this team over with a vision in place for 2023, and that was to run the football. They made a lot of moves to improve the run game. Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey were not just good offensive linemen. They were run-blocking offensive linemen. Chris Meinerz, a run-blocking tight end. You can see an emphasis being made to run the football, and I don't know if they're going to allow Russell Wilson to pass the ball enough for them not to finish top 5 in rushing carries or attempts, because that appears to be the bread and butter of this team's offense for 2023.